Welcome back, video design students. In this video, we're going to insert the beginning preamble highlight track, which is this thing right here. At the beginning of this sequence, we're going to overlap the audio track with the speaking track, the music track with the speaking track, so that we can sort of have one fade out and the other one begin. And then also we're going to create a transition between this zoom here at the end. We're going to zoom out here, and then we're going to zoom in here. So we're going to create a transition here using animation between these two clips. So let's start by taking our slider down here at the bottom of the timeline and moving this over so it's at the beginning so we can see 0, 0. And then let's come over to our project bin and click the back up a level folder button here. I'm not sure what this is called. And open up the audio folder. And then let's take the vertical slider and pull that down and maybe zoom out a little bit so we can see that second audio track. And let's take that music track and put it right at the very beginning. And then let's take both of these tracks, and we can select both of them by drawing a marquee selection, holding down our left mouse button and dragging, and pull that over so they overlap a bit, like so. And let's see what that sounds like.
Welcome back to Friday Night Rivalries, and folks, thanks for tuning in to the one.
And you can see how the music begins to fade out, and then he begins to talk.
Welcome back to Friday Night Rivalries, and folks, thanks for tuning in to the 1A state.
And that's what we want. So adjust that until you get that that overlap there. And what you may want to do is turn off snapping, so you can move these without snapping to the time slider. You may want to nudge your clips left or right in very small increments. If you need to do that, you can hold down the Alt key and use your left and right arrows to nudge them just a frame at a time. Okay, the next thing we want to do is bring in this highlight reel from the beginning, the opening sequence, or the opening clip. So we need to go back a level using the folder icon here. And we're going to go back to video, and here's the opening sequence. And we're going to take this opening sequence and put it in track 2. But notice how it has an audio track with it. We don't need that audio track. So let's do something else. Just drag that back into the bin. And let's double click on that clip. And when we do, it brings it up in the source monitor. That's true with any clip. But if we bring it up in the source monitor, then we can use these two buttons just below the preview screen right here to drag just the video or just the audio into the timeline. So just hover over the little film strip icon here and drag that down and drop it right there in the track above the announcer sequence. And if you turn snapping off, turn it back on, and then snap it to the beginning of the sequence. So after we drag it into the timeline, what we have is this tiny little video clip here. Obviously, we need to scale that up. So select the clip, and then come to the Effects tab, and open up Motion if you need to, like so. Find Scale, and we're going to scale that up, just like we did with the announcer, until it fills the frame. And then let's scrub the clip a little bit to make sure that everything looks good. And that's about as good as we can get it. And now let's create that transition we talked about. If we push play, or L on your keyboard, or the space bar, you see.
Welcome back to Friday Night Rivalries, and folks, thanks for tuning in to the 1A state track champ.
So we want to do is create sort of a zoom transition here between this clip and this clip. So what we're going to do is start by animating this clip here. Before this goes dark here, we want it to zoom in. So find yourself a few frames before the end, like maybe, gotta wait until they come into focus at least. You can nudge using your arrows. Want to zoom out before that's happened, so back up a few frames from here, maybe 10 frames. With that clip selected, we are going to come up to the Effects tab and we're going to turn on the watch for scale. And that creates a keyframe here at the end. And then we're going to take the time slider and scrub it forward. That's what that's called when you move it. It's called scrubbing. And as it begins to fade out, we want to zoom it in. Okay? We want to zoom it in rapidly. So move that time slider forward a few frames, and you can zoom in on the effects timeline by dragging the little zoom slider here, just like that. You can see the space here. And then we're going to drag the scale up like so. And this is what we end up with.
Folks, thanks for tuning in to the...
Now that's not fast enough. So I think what we want to do is move this keyframe to the end here. Like so, right? And then we want to move this one closer to it so that it happens faster. Like that. But we're going to select that last keyframe and move to the end here. Find that last frame by using your right arrow. Right there. And we're going to zoom in a little bit more so it makes it faster. We want sort of what's called a crash zoom. So here's what we end up with.
Tuning in to the 1A state.
Okay, now what we want to do with him is zoom him out. All right. So what we're going to do with him is get to the beginning of his track, or somewhere in where this one starts to zoom. Let's select the cheerleader track and find that first keyframe right here. That's where that first motion starts to happen, right here. And then select this clip, and this is where we want to start our zooming out with him. But we need to be able to see him right now. We can't see him because this track is on top. So what we're going to do is come over here under the V2 track settings right here and find the eyeball and turn that clip off so we can see him. And then we're going to find the scale setting, and we're not going to turn on the watch yet. And we're going to scale him up. But before we do, note this number. It's 329. Remember that. That's what mine is. All right. Here's what, and then we're going to zoom in like so. And then we're going to turn on the watch. And then we're going to move forward to where then we're going to turn this clip back on so we can see it, and we're going to move forward. And then right here, we need to be back at 329. So we're going to set a keyframe. Let's zoom in some. Let's select the announcer track. Zoom in on the effects controls some. Sometimes it does that too. We don't want that to happen. Zoom in just a little bit. We're going to come over here to this number, the scale number, and we're going to select it. We're just going to click on it, and that allows us to type in 329. And when we do, that sets a keyframe. So now we have this motion. This is what we got. Let's play it and see what it looks like.
Thanks for tuning in to the 1A State Track Championships.
That's not exactly what we want. I think we want to work on that a little bit. Let's drag these two closer together and see what that looks like. This is the announcer clip.
To the 1A State Track.
And that we couldn't see that, so I'm going to push Control Z. Maybe drag this one a little closer.
1A State Track Champ.
A little closer still.
Into the 1A State Track Championship.
And then I think we need to pull both of them back a little bit.
1A State Track Championship.
Still not quite. And this is the problem with animation. You got to work on the timing. The timing is absolutely critical. Okay. So I think also what we need to do with this one is change the opacity, because when this one is fading to black, we need it to actually fade away. Right? It's fading to black on its own, but it's not going transparent here. So when it starts to zoom in and fade out, what we need to do is actually keyframe its opacity. So let's zoom in a little bit on the effects tab, and we make sure we're working on the cheerleader track here. And we're going to come down to opacity, which is right here. We're going to open that up. We're going to keyframe the opacity, all right? Turn on the watch. It's now 100%. We're going to move forward a few frames, just a few, and we're going to make that opacity 0. So now we are actually
Thanks for tuning in to the 1A State Track.
Like that. So when this opacity is, this needs to start zooming out. This one about here. And if you can see, it's not zooming out at the right time. You can see that right there. So we're going to take these and move them over and see how that looks.
Into the 1A State Track Champ.
And there you go. Now we have a nice overlap.
Into the 1A State Track.
But I think that this probably needs to have a little work done to it. Let's zoom in a little bit and maybe make this zoom a little faster. Just a little bit more.
To the 1A State Track Champ.
And we want to make sure this one, the announcer track, is actually moving before it's clear. So I wish this zoom thing worked better.
Into the 1A State Track Champion.
There we go. I just made those overlap a little bit. So this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to work with these keyframes on this clip and make sure that they seamlessly blend into each other like this.
Welcome back to Friday Night Robberies, and folks, thanks for tuning in to the 1A State Track Champion.
And that's what we want. All right, so that's it for this video. In the next video, what we're going to do is begin to add the lower thirds titles and animate them. And I'll see you in the next video.